This video will demonstrate how to manage expenses such as medical, childcare costs, etc. These expenses are used as deductions when calculating a tenant's annual adjusted income. You can locate this option in HDS Win by going to the Applicant Module and selecting Applicant Tenant File. You will now locate and select the desired participant. Once selected, a list of applicant tenant file options will be displayed. From here, you will select Expenses. Any expenses that were entered previously will be listed in the grid. We will assume for training purposes at this point that the grid is empty and no expenses have been entered. To add an expense, click on the Add button. A new screen will emerge. Select the household member the expense should be applied to by clicking on the arrow at the end of the household member field and choosing from the drop-down list. Next, you will select the category. Again, you will choose from the drop-down list. For this example, we will use childcare expense for work. You will now select the frequency, or in other words, how often the expenses occurred, based on the information you were provided. Your choices for frequency, as you can see from the drop-down menu, are hourly, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, annual, and semi-monthly. In this example, we will select weekly. After you have selected the frequency, you will enter in a rate or amount of the expense based on the frequency that was selected. For example, if you chose childcare cost and a frequency of weekly, then an example would be to enter $100 into the rate. Based on 52 weeks per year, this would yield an annual expense of $5,200. The hours per week field is used if you selected hourly for the frequency. We'll change our frequency to hourly. Then you would need to enter in the number of hours per week into this field. For an example, we'll use $10 per hour as a rate and an hours worked per week of 20. This will yield an annual expense of $10,400. The weeks per year field is used if you selected a frequency of hourly or weekly. You would then enter a value into this field. This will aid with the input of irregular expenses. I will enter the following example so that you can see how the weeks per year comes into play for irregular expenses. For frequency, we have hourly. We're going to leave the rate at $10 per hour. The hours per week we're going to change to 5, and the weeks per year will change to 20. This will yield an annual expense of $1,000. You will notice the annual amount is automatically calculated using the frequency, rate, and hours per week that were entered to determine the annual amount of expense for the item displayed. The description field is optional and can be used to further describe the associated expense item. For example, you may enter the type of a medical expense or the name of a child care provider. The information entered into the description field will print on the rent calculation worksheet. The last updated field is used to allow you to see at a glance whether the information needs to be updated for the current action. You'll want to enter in the date each expense item has been updated. By default, the current date will be inserted. You can access a calendar by right-clicking on the date and selecting Calendar. Here you have the ability to scroll to the date that you would like to use. Once selected, click on Save. The field will automatically update. The Note field can be used to enter additional information. The information entered will display on the screen but will not print on any forms. When you are done entering the requested information, click on Save. The Output option will generate an expense detail report. The report will list expenses for all household members grouped by expense category. A subcategory for each category and a grand total will also be displayed. If you would like to modify an existing expense, highlight the expense and then click on Detail. Now click on Edit, and then you have the ability to modify any of the information. When your changes are complete, click on Save. If you would like to delete an existing expense, highlight the expense and then click on Delete.